Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
David, break this down for me. You think that investing in rental properties is really very easy.
Dan, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's not rocket science. It's not complicated. And it's a low-risk investment that I think is simple enough for anybody to understand, because we all need somewhere to live. And so the concept of having a rental as an investment property is just kind of already ingrained in us, I think, because we already know we need somewhere to live. So why not provide a nice place to live for someone else too?
On the podcast today, we're going to figure out what David is doing to make investing in rental properties easy. We'll talk about the types of properties he's buying. We'll talk about the financing and how he's buying rentals with as little as 5% down. And we'll also talk about how David got sued by a tenant, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. Joining us on the show today from Fayetteville, North Carolina is David Sattelmeyer. We'll take a quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to David. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property. And when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Investing in rental properties can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be. My friends at MidSouth HomeBuyers sell completely rehab turnkey properties in both Memphis and Little Rock, and they've been doing it for 23 years. All their properties come totally rehab. They put on a new roof, new kitchen, new bath, new plumbing, new electric. Everything is brand new. They also have a tenant that's moved in before you close, so you get cash flow on day one. MidSouth HomeBuyers also continues to manage the property for you after closing. It couldn't be easier. Everything is 100% done for you. All their properties also come with a couple of guarantees. They have a 1-year total maintenance warranty and a lifetime occupancy guarantee. Personally, I just closed on my 5th property with MidSouth HomeBuyers, and I couldn't be happier. If you want to talk to a happy customer, reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions, or you can check them out at midsouthhomebuyers.com. For decades, real estate has been a cornerstone of the world's largest portfolios, but it's also historically been complex, time-consuming, and expensive. But imagine if real estate investing was suddenly easy. All the benefits of owning real, tangible assets without all the complexity and expense. That's the power of the Fundrise Flagship Real Estate Fund. Now you can invest in a $1.1 billion portfolio of real estate starting with as little as $10. 4,700 single-family rental homes spread across the booming Sunbelt. 3.3 million square feet of highly sought-after industrial facilities thanks to the e-commerce wave. The Flagship Fund is one of the largest of its kind, well-diversified, and managed by a team of professionals. And now it's available to you. Visit fundrise.com/RIP to explore the fund's full portfolio, check out historical returns, and start investing in just minutes. Carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the Fundrise Flagship Fund before investing. This and other information can be found in the fund's perspective at fundrise.com/flagship. This is a paid advertisement. David, before we get into your story, give me the real quick version of how you got started buying rentals.
Sure. So I started back in 2005 and just needed somewhere to live. And then as, a normal life occurrence, as my family grew and needed a bigger house, I turned that first house into a rental. So that's kind of how it all started. And from there, I just picked up more along the way. They're all single family homes in different counties in North Carolina and across different school districts and different neighborhoods. But the common trend with all of them is single family homes. And I like having single family homes because your exit strategy is easier than perhaps other rental investments because it's the most in demand housing product in America. So you don't necessarily have to sell when you want to exit your single family residential to other investors. You could sell it to homeowners who'd like to live there.
So it sounds like you're doing really well. I want to figure out what you're doing. So when you're looking at a neighborhood that you want to invest in, what are you looking for?
I definitely bought some stuff in the beginning that I perhaps would not purchase again today, but they've actually all done very well for me because, again, I bought all single family residential and everybody needs a house to live in. And so that has really helped. And so, I'm looking for, a neighborhood where there's some pride of home ownership. You drive in and all the yards look good and everybody's trying to keep up the maintenance of the properties. You can tell a lot by looking at the yards, the exterior maintenance, the roofs, the siding, and so forth. And so that's definitely something I'm looking for, is that pride of home ownership and that people want to take care of it. And then I can take my investment to boost that neighborhood as well.
So in the neighborhoods, would you say these are more like owner occupied neighborhoods than rental neighborhoods?
So in the area I'm in the Fayetteville, North Carolina, greater Fort Bragg area, it's a huge rental market here. About half the homes are actually rentals versus the rest of America, which is hovering more closer to about 70% for home ownership. But here, it's such a big rental area due to the military here. And so, about half are rentals. And I don't really get into analyze the neighborhood as far as how many are rentals or, there's homeowner properties, that sort of thing. I'm just kind of looking for, how does everything look,
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point, though, with the military, it being such a big military area that I'm sure it's probably pretty easy to find tenants.
It is. It really is. Because a lot who serve in the military, and I thank them for their service, they're just at Fort Bragg for a year or 2 years for some training, and they move on to another duty station and so forth. So sometimes it doesn't make sense for them to actually buy something and stay here long term due to their military service. And so a lot of them will just rent and then move on to their next assignment. And so it's very easy to get tenants here. I will say over the years, I've seen more and more civilian tenants who have not served in the military at all. And the civilian side has definitely grown here as well. So, and Fort Bragg is, the U.S. Army's largest military installation in the world. So we have a pretty good population that's always going to be here with the rentals.
So tell me about the properties that you're buying. So when you find a property, are you looking for a property that needs a lot of updating, or are you looking for properties that are pretty much rent ready?
That's a great point. So I recommend looking for something that's not needing a lot of maintenance. Some updating is okay because tenants aren't as picky as like a homeowner, for example, that wants that HD TV looking type home recently remodeled. Tenants aren't quite that picky. They want it to be nice and well maintained, but they can certainly rent it with some of the house outdated, of course. And so I look for something that's going to need less, cosmetics, carpet and paint, and less repairs and that sort of thing, because I don't want to dump a ton of money into it on day one, and then I can't get my money back. It's just stuck there until I sell it one day. So I am trying to find something that, for myself and for the investors that I help as a licensed realtor for Central and the Realty Group, that doesn't need a lot of work on day one. And in fact, one that I picked up one time, all it needed was about $500. I was kind of proud of that one.
Wow.
And a lot of that $500 at the time was just cleaning it. So that was a good deal. Good. I mean, it didn't take a whole lot to get to a tenant to move in.
Is there a certain bedroom bathroom combination that you find rents better? Like, is a 2-bedroom better than a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom? Like, what do you think is the best setup?
Sure. That's a great question. So I am amazed that in this area, just about anything rents, to be honest with you. But if I had to say that I had a preference and that I recommend to other investors, I would say go for that 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, with a single car garage, maybe a carport, but at least one spot for that vehicle, where you can, unload your groceries and that sort of thing out of the rain. Because to me, you have more tenants wanting your property if you have a 3-2 with a single car garage, because your property is more in touch with modern desires. Okay. And so, that would be better than getting, say, an obsolete property, something that doesn't have that garage or carport, something that, only has one full bathroom or only 2 bedrooms. That to me is more a house of the past. We don't really build those too much anymore nowadays. Pretty much just about every buyer or tenant you talk to, almost the first thing you hear right out of their mouth is, I want a 3-2 right away. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's good to be kind of in that zone. But you can have success with other things for sure. But I think it's better to be kind of in that middle area too.
Let's talk about financing. So I know that you've bought your properties with a small down payment. What are you talking about? Like, down payment wise, what percentage are you generally putting down?
So most of the rentals I picked up here were VA foreclosures owned by the Department of Veteran Affairs. So tragically, when a veteran fails to pay on their mortgage, just like any borrower, it becomes a foreclosure at some point. And so the Department of Veteran Affairs guarantees these VA loans for veterans. And so they pay off the lender in full. Now the VA owns this property, and now they want to just sell it and get as much money as they can back. And so these VA foreclosures, with them, you have a certain financing program called the VA vending financing. And again, that's VA vending financing. And they still do it to this day. And that's typically just 5% down, which is a great deal. And I was able to pick up a lot of these properties for a lot less than other loan types where you might need 20% down or 25% down. And so that was a really good deal and helped me, pick up some properties fairly quickly.
That's a really low down payment. And so it has to be a VA foreclosure.
That's right. It's got to be a VA foreclosure because the Department of Veteran Affairs, they have a company that they contract out to manage their foreclosures. And so that company offers that financing as an incentive to try to clear the books and move these VA foreclosures off of the VA's book, so to speak. And so it's a great tool.
And did you have to be in the military at some point to qualify for that?
Oh, anyone can do it.
Anyone can do it.
Wow. It's not a VA loan per se. VA loan is for someone who's a veteran who has served or is serving. So this VA vending financing. The VA vending financing is for any investor, and your service is not a consideration for using it. So anyone can use it anywhere that there's VA foreclosures, and veterans are, all over the country. So you can find VA foreclosures anywhere, but somewhere like here where you have a military base, you're going to have a higher concentration of those VA foreclosures. And then again, like I said, any investor without military service can use the VA vending financing to pick up one of these VA foreclosures and use it as a rental.
So you're buying properties that don't need a lot of work and you don't need a big down payment. So it seems like from the way that you're doing this, it's very obtainable. Like you don't need a huge pile of money to get into a rental.
That's true. Yeah, this is it's a low risk investment, and you can get in. There's a low barrier to entry, so to speak, with taking advantage of properties being in better shape. You're still buying them below full market value. So, excuse me, you have some instant equity from day one. And then, with using that VA vending program, you don't have to use a lot of money to get into it.
Yeah.
And even if that's not available, it's still a great opportunity, even if you have to use other financing just to grow your wealth. There's just so many reasons you want to pick up rentals.
The only negative that I can think of with a small down payment is that sometimes it's hard to cash flow. I mean, if you don't have a lot of equity in the property, has that been the case, or do the properties still cash flow with putting 5% down?
You bring up a great point. There's pros and cons to everything. The low barrier to entry with, not needing a lot of money to get it rent ready and then just 5% down. That's a big pro. You're able to get into a rental faster than if you had to save up longer. But you're right, that impacts your positive cash flow. And so some of my properties, to be honest, when I first bought them, back in 05, 06, '07 or whatnot, '09, the positive cash flow was not that great. In fact, I would say that some of them, we're just kind of at the break-even point. We're just basically just getting enough from the rent to get by to cover, the day-to-day pain of, or the month-to-month, so to speak, of paying that mortgage. But over time, it's worked out because, the mortgage has kind of stayed steady. Of course, property taxes increase from time to time, and your insurance will increase from time to time as well. But your principal and interest should stay the same because you've got preferably a 30-year or 20-year fixed rate loan, and so that part didn't change. And so the rents here have risen dramatically, just like most of the country, over the past decade, and that's really helped the positive cash flow because my monthly payment has not dramatically changed. It's gone up some, again, with the property taxes and homeowners insurance that you need to have, but the principal and interest stay the same. So with the rents rising in this area, that's really helped the positive cash flow. And so you need to stay in this for the long term. This is a long-term game. It's not a get-rich-quick thing. And if you stay in it for the long term, it's like a long-term savings plan. And it works out really well where eventually your positive cash flow comes up over time and you really start making some money there. But more importantly, the home is growing in value. Most homes I picked up back then are now worth twice as much, which is awesome. And then plus, you got to think the tax deductions too, to where now you're paying less taxes when you file your income taxes every year because you can write off so much from these rentals. Your primary residence, you can only write off like 2 things every year, and that's it. But these rentals, you can write off over 10 things for each rental, and that really adds up and is a big savings in tax.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That I think it's like focusing just on the cash flow today is a mistake. I think people are maybe leaving a lot of money on the table by only looking at the cash flow today, where, you have a good point that over time, the rents are going to go up. Over time, the property is going to appreciate. You've got the tax savings. So maybe it's not a home run deal today, but if you hang in there for 10, 15, 20 years, I feel like most investments are probably going to be pretty good.
Exactly. I think too many investors get caught up in microanalysis. It is important to try to analyze the deal and get as best of a deal as you can up front. But sometimes people overanalyze and they just miss out on the fact that just start investing. That's better than not investing.
Yeah.
Don't wait for the perfect deal because they're rarely out there. And waiting for the perfect deal, you miss out on so many good deals that would have been just fine and worked out in the long run. So I think you bring up a great point of just get in the game. And you may not always meet the 1% rule that a lot of investors want with these rentals where, whatever you're paying for it, you're going to get that 1% of that as your monthly payment for the rental. And that's great if you can get it. But if not, just invest, just get in the game because this is a long-term savings plan and it's going to grow your wealth dramatically. And the properties that I bought back then, now I'm sitting on over 6 figures of instant equity, instant wealth. If I were to sell them today, it's a dramatic growth in wealth. And so a lot of the country actually holds their wealth in real estate more so than stocks and bonds. And that's an important point too. You want to definitely at least own your own home, let alone get in a rental, because if you just rent your whole life, you're missing out on growing your wealth by not taking advantage of the positive benefits of home ownership. And by getting these rentals, you're able to amplify that and get even more benefits than just owning your own home and adding these rentals to your portfolio as well.
Yeah. I think you really got to think long term. The one thing I just want to caution everybody is that if you get into a property that's not producing a lot of cash flow, make sure you have money from your job or somewhere else to carry you, because you're going to have tough months where there's repairs or vacancy. But as long as you can cover that mortgage, I think it's only going to benefit you to think long term. Let's talk about management. So do you manage your properties yourself or do you have a property manager?
So even though I'm a licensed realtor, I hired a property manager to do all that for me. And it makes my life so much easier having an outstanding property manager. It really does. So I highly recommend that, and highly recommend, just like you said, your tip of having some savings in place for those times when these rentals can be challenging when there's vacancies or repairs needed or that sort of thing.
The way that you have things set up sounds very simple. It sounds like everything's going great, but tell us something bad. Like, has anything bad happened? Like, I don't know, maybe have you been sued by a tenant?
Just one time. Yes.
Wow.
One time. And I'm thankful to say nothing came out of it because, you filed that insurance claim and they hired so many lawyers that it was insane. There was like 8 or 9 lawyers just to deal with this tenant and her one lawyer. And they just put him in the corner, really.
Wow.
And I didn't pay a penny. It really was a frivolous lawsuit. and they took care of it.
So you just called your insurance company when you got the notice that you were getting sued. You just called your insurance company and they took it from there?
That's it. Yeah. And everything was handled. I didn't pay anything. And I think they may have given the tenant a small payment, but they took care of it out of their pocket. Yeah.
So it didn't affect you personally getting sued.
It didn't. It was very low stress. It was very manageable. And, to me, if you do the right things and try to take care of your tenants and follow the state laws and give them a nice place to live, they're more likely to take care of the place. They're more likely to take care of you. So treat people how you want to be treated. And most of these things will never, ever happen. There's, of course, unreasonable people and difficult people. And so sometimes these things can happen. But if you usually are good to people and stay on top of the maintenance and take care of them and try to work with the tenants and give permission to paint when they want to paint and these sort of things and work with people, treat people like you want to be treated, the golden rule, you're going to be just fine. And again, the property manager is really there to lower your risk.
As David mentioned earlier in the interview, he's a realtor. He works with a lot of investors in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area. If you're investing in that area or you want to talk to David about investing in that area, I've got his contact information on the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 513. I'd like to thank Chaley Ridge for making today's episode possible. If you're looking to buy a rental property, whether you're just getting started or you want to add to your portfolio, reach out to Chaley. She's a nationwide lender. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something that'll work for you. You can track her down at ridgelendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. Make sure you hit the follow button. I put out a new episode every single Tuesday, and if you're following the show, you'll get notified when the next episode comes out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.